welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show. We are talking with Dr. Babbie Lester with the Mountain Sage Natural Health and Acupuncture Center. And if you didn't catch her before, we're talking about ways that you can improve your overall health. And now it's about an anti-inflammatory diet that we're going to discuss. So how do you know if you even need to go on a diet like this, first of all?
Probably if you have any symptoms that you're unhappy with.
Which would be?
Menstrual cramps, knee pain, overweight, headaches.
That sounds like everyone.
Yeah.
Almost, pretty much.
Well, I think that we certainly get into this with, I think a lot more people than realize some of these things, like as I said, are sort of systemic. They start off with something very small, but it's an expanding problem.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's kind of a chain.
Right.
And I'm fascinated by the idea. We just kind of talked about me specifically, which it's hard not to when you have an opportunity to sort of talk about these things. But I think it does help to sort of highlight how this works. But it can start anywhere, but it can progressively get pretty bad throughout the body.
Yeah.
So how does one go about figuring out what food it is that's bothering them?
Well, typically, we start with the anti-inflammatory diet, and then we
So
do
there's
what's
already
called
a set diet that says this is what's not going to cause inflammation.
Yep, exactly. And so you start with the anti-inflammatory diet. After you've had time to let your intestinal wall heal and your digestive tract heal, then you can start adding foods back in one at a time. And so within 24 to 72 hours of reintroducing a food, you'll know whether or not your body is psyched about it.
Now, you mentioned your intestinal wall healing. Talk about that. What's happening there that
So what
relates?
happens when we eat food time and time again that our body doesn't like is we have basically a lining around the intestinal wall called the mucosa.
Right.
And the mucosal membrane, along with our good gut flora, the probiotics, helps keep that wall healthy. With antibiotics and with certain acidic foods, the intestinal wall starts breaking down, that mucosa starts breaking down, so the barrier is no longer there. And then you start getting what's called leaky gut syndrome, and then it goes from there.
Leaky gut syndrome sounds awful.
Yeah.
What's can you give us some of the
So usually with
indications
like
of that?
celiac disease or irritable bowel syndrome,
wondered.
what happens, what starts to happen is that food particles actually start breaking through that barrier, and then the body recognizes them as foreign and starts attacking them. So then it's not just the wheat or whatever that you're reacting to, your body starts attacking almost every food you put in because food particles are leaking through the intestinal wall.
wow?
Yeah.
So along with that, let's discuss more of the anti-inflammatory diet.
Okay.
What foods go first, in what portions, or does it go with a certain daily schedule?
No, not
how would you go
really.
about doing
So usually we recommend up to 6 weeks of the anti-inflammatory diet. What that is a lot of vegetables, and we always recommend lightly steamed vegetables over raw, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Fruits, except for citrus, fish, chicken, turkey, what else? Gluten-free grains, extra virgin olive oil, and then very small amounts of alternative sugar, like maple syrup or agave or stevia.
So that's what you stick with for 6 weeks?
That's what you eat. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would find this difficult.
You might. But it gets
Probably
easier.
would, Joe. We were talking about fair foods earlier,
Funnel
or theme
cakes
park
and turkey.
foods. Yeah, that wouldn't fly with this diet.
Yeah.
So essentially what you're avoiding is coffee, alcohol, sugar, red meat, pork, citrus except for lemon.
Wow.
What else am I missing, Chelsea?
Well, we talked about, I think you said for drinks, herbal teas, and water. And then, so avoid, you mentioned just all of them, of course, no milk,
Yeah.
no eggs.
Cow
No
dairy.
cheese,
No
really?
fried
No
yet.
dairy?
Right.
What does cheese do?
If you think about the size of a cow versus the size of a human, that cow is a lot larger, and the milk protein molecule is really hard for our body to digest. We're the only animals after the first or second year of life that consume milk,
Right.
and another
still-
animal's milk at that.
Well, along with that, how do you still allow yourself to get that calcium and vitamins that people say you do need
Yep.
from
Yep.
milk? How do you
So
do that?
leafy green vegetables are really high in calcium. Also, your alternative milks. So your rice milk, your hazelnut milk, hemp milk, all of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just overwhelmed by the challenge of it all, although I have to admit to you that there's several things that I would love to not have, happening in my body that would be great,
Right.
but I'm overwhelmed by what I would have to do.
Well, and the beautiful thing about naturopathic medicine is that you make the choice, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And typically what happens is that people come to me and they say, Babbie, there's no way I can do that. And I say, you know what, just try it for 3 weeks. And after 3 weeks, they feel so much better that they're like, of course
How
I
can
can do
you
this.
go
Right.
back to your
Right.
regular
Really?
diet
And
after
then
that?
even after 3 weeks, 6 weeks is better, but after 3 weeks, they start adding things back in one at a time. And as soon as they add it back in, they're like, oh my gosh, I feel awful. And so then they make a choice. Most people choose to stick with the diet because they feel so much better.
Well, that's excellent.
Yeah.
So great ways to help yourself feel better all
Right.
around. And like we were
Right.
saying before, it sounds like just about anyone could use this type of diet. And so along with that, with the changing seasons, how do we prepare for that as far as what we intake? And
That's a good question. So in classical Chinese medicine, our food choices follow the seasons. So in the summer, it's a lot more fresh vegetables, raw vegetables, salads. Now that we're moving into fall, it's more root vegetables, cooked stews and soups, and just warming things up, staying away from the raw and the cold.
so why is that so important to go with the seasons? and
Because
what
we're
you eat?
Well, for instance, in the fall, as things start to cool down, our bodies start to cool down too. And if we're continuing to ingest raw, cold food, our body has to work a lot harder to warm it up. And then it's a lot harder to digest.
So many things
I know,
that
it's
anyone
fascinating.
can use. It really is.
Yeah, we could talk about this for a long time. It's
Yeah.
really interesting. We were kind of running out of time, which is unfortunate. 'Cause
I know, there's so
could-
much to talk about,
Yeah,
so-
I really could ask a lot more. With regard to acupuncture, does it hurt?
Sometimes.
Yeah,
Not
Lots of it
usually.
hurts.
Not usually.
yeah.
Yeah, the needles are pretty small.
Is that something that you get used to as you go in for more treatments?
Definitely.
Or, okay.
Yep, and you
There
actually
go,
start
Joe.
craving that feeling. So
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Joe doesn't seem
Wow.
like he believes this. He's just in awe.
Yeah, well, I totally am actually. I believe in these are people who have been studying medicine for longer than most countries have existed. So I'm kind of a big believer in Chinese and
Yeah.
Japanese methods of healing.
Yeah, it's been
So-
amazing. We've seen a lot of really good things with it.
So good to hear. Well, Dr. Babbie, where can people go to get more information and to get in touch with you and start any of these processes in their own life?
Our website is mountainsagenaturalhealth.com. The phone number is 435-655-SAGE, and we're in Prospector.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Yes.
so
Yeah.
much.
It was awesome
Thank you.
having you on
Thank
the
you
show.
for having me.
It really was. So be sure to check out Dr. Babbie Lester online. She can help you out. It sounds like with pretty much anything if you have any issues that you want to take care of.
Yeah, I'll be over at
to
about
talk
10:30.
to. Joe's ready to
And-
go. So thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you, Chelsea.
Babbie. It was
Thank
a
you,
pleasure
Joe.
having you here this morning. We'll be right back here with more on the show, talking about your national weather forecast.